Hi, everybody. Today, let's talk about Cassandra Syndrome. I want to talk about what it is, how to spot it, and what to do about it. I'm Jodi Carlton, and I'm a neurodiverse relationship expert. So Cassandra Syndrome refers to something that is akin to complex PTSD, but it's associated with being in a neurodiverse relationship. Historically, we've associated Cassandra Syndrome with neurotypical partners who have an autistic spouse or partner. We've seen more recently that autistic or other neurodivergent individuals, maybe someone who has ADHD, can also experience Cassandra Syndrome. If you're in a neurodiverse relationship, you may be experiencing Cassandra Syndrome. So we're going to talk about the signs and the symptoms and what you can do to help yourself heal. Now, the reason Cassandra Syndrome is specifically associated with neurodivergent relationships, particularly where one or both partners is autistic, is because of the differences in how the brains work in autistic individuals versus neurotypical individuals, and even between two different autistic individuals. Brain wiring is very different in terms of how thoughts are processed, how we think and form logical conclusions, whether that's a very linear process or more like a tree that branches out. Also, the differences in how we process emotions, experience emotions, feel them in our body. We use the term feelings interchangeably with emotions. Sensory processing differences. Sensory processing is how the brain takes in information from the environment. The way we hear sound or smells or tastes, and all of that's processed by the brain as information. Emotions are information. Thought is actually information. Thoughts are not facts. Thoughts are a form of data processing for us to make sense of our situation and to come up with conclusions and problem solve. And with neurodivergence, basically what we know is that a neurodivergent brain processes things, experiences things in a way that's not typical. Now, that doesn't mean there's something wrong with that brain. It just means that when you look at the averages and the most commonly occurring traits in the human population, there are more commonly occurring ways that the brain processes information. And then there are those that are outliers. So for example, high levels of intelligence that's a form of neurodivergence. And that can be academic type of intelligence, problem-solving intelligence, intuitive types of intelligence, musical intelligence, artistic intelligence. There's a lot of different kinds of intelligence. But when we see that someone has capacities that are much greater than typical, that's an outlier. But then we also see people who have, they have traits where it's more difficult for the brain to process or to do certain things. That's also a neurodivergence. So here's the thing. All of that is invisible. We can't see it in between us and amongst ourselves. So it's very difficult to really know and anticipate and understand how someone else's brain is working. I often use the analogy of colorblindness. When someone is colorblind or even just needs glasses, their only frame of reference is their own. And the rest of us who aren't colorblind can't tell from looking at that person that they're not seeing the same spectrum of color that we're seeing. That's not something that we figure out until it becomes more obvious if there are discussions about colors and you start to recognize you're not seeing the same thing. But each person still has their own frame of reference. So this happens in neurodiverse relationships where we can't see what the other one is experiencing. It's not visible on the outside. So there are so many miscommunications and misunderstandings because even the way words are used, the way language is used, the way emotions are experienced in the body, the way sensations are perceived are so different that when you have a conversation with someone about something, whatever, a situation, an experience, an interaction or decisions even that you're making together, when you're not aware that what you are perceiving or experiencing that's very real to you, that's your reality, is very different from what your partner is experiencing. And that's their reality. So what happens are this conflict usually happens. There's a lot of he said, she said. There's a lot of I said that, no, I didn't. That happened, no, it didn't. That's not what I meant. Yes, it is. That's not what that means. Yes, it is. And so oftentimes one or both partners ends up feeling like their reality is being called into question. And there's a lot of, it feels like gaslighting. Gaslighting is when someone intentionally makes you doubt your reality in order to have power over you and to control you. And so in neurodiverse relationships, it can really be difficult when a partner is consistently saying that what you experienced is not true. Now, the reason this phenomenon is called Cassandra Syndrome, it's because it's based on a figure from Greek mythology. Cassandra was someone who was gifted with the ability to see the future, but no one ever believed her. So Cassandra Syndrome is about your reality being called into question, which leads to your own self-doubt. It leads to people feeling like they're crazy. Their spouse, their partner, sometimes even family and friends are saying, no, what you're experiencing doesn't seem real or true or valid to us from our perspective. That's a common thing to happen on occasion in a relationship. But in a neurodiverse relationship where one partner is neurotypical, or maybe ADHD even, and the other partner is autistic, one of the dynamics in that relationship is that autistic thinkers tend to be very black and white, very yes, no, right, wrong. And so there's a lot of my autistic clients, and even my family members, I have autistic family members, have described how they don't see those nuanced possibilities between yes or no, right or wrong. And so for them, their perspective or the answer to a situation, the way to solve a problem, or the definition of a word, whatever it is what it is or it's not. And that is a very binary black and white way of thinking, which is a hallmark characteristic of autism. Autistic individuals struggle to see those other possibilities, the in-betweens, whereas neurotypical partners live and exist in the in-betweens. Neurotypical individuals process life and information and thoughts by looking at all those nuanced, different possibilities for how to interpret something, what something means, what a word or an expression means, even what a feeling means. And so a neurotypical person will automatically look for those different possibilities. And in conversations with a partner, they will automatically question and allow space for their partner's perspective, even if it's really different from their own. They'll allow space for it and they'll consider it, and they'll look at, okay, maybe I misread this. Maybe there's, a different way of perceiving this. And so that neurotypical partner consistently gives space to the autistic partner for having a different perspective. But the autistic partner is not giving the neurotypical partner that same space. There's no reciprocity there, meaning you're allowing me space, and so I can allow you space to have a different interpretation, a different point of view, a different perspective, a different definition, a different option. The autistic partner still sees things as in it's this or that. To me, the fact is it's this, so that can't be true. If I'm autistic and I'm speaking to you as my neurotypical partner, your perspective is wrong. You're remembering it wrong. Your opinion is wrong. And that feels crazy making to a neurotypical partner who knows their own reality is real, but their autistic partner is telling them it's not. And it can very much feel like being overpowered. It can feel like an autistic partner is trying to control you, trying to make you feel crazy. This is one of the reasons why autistic partners oftentimes are mistaken for narcissists, because narcissists use gaslighting to control, and they intentionally completely lie about the truth. It's not a matter of misperception. It's not a matter of differences in opinion and perspectives. It's a matter of a narcissist knows what the truth is, or knows what your version of the truth is if you're on the receiving end of that, and then intentionally tells you you're wrong in order to make you doubt yourself. That is not what's happening in a neurodiverse relationship with someone who's autistic, but it can feel that way. Over the course of time, this dynamic starts to accumulate. It's like a debt in the bank. Once or twice in the beginning, it's like a withdrawal from the relationship connection. And then over time, more and more withdrawals happen with fewer and fewer deposits into the relationship connection, because this difference in the way brains are working really prevents connection, because connection oftentimes is about shared meaning, shared understanding, shared meaning, shared feelings, shared connection. And when those shared moments there are less of those and more of these withdrawals, so there's less of those deposits into the relationship and more of those withdrawals from the relationship, a neurotypical partner can begin to experience traumatic type symptoms, like PTSD type symptoms, when their reality is being called into question over and over again. The autistic partner oftentimes is not aware of the impact that this is having on a neurotypical partner. And it's a lot of times it's not having the same kind of impact on them, because again, they're kind of black and white. I was right, she was wrong. End of story. It's said and done. It's over. Now, an autistic partner oftentimes will respond with being, they'll get really upset or angry if their partner says they're wrong, or if they feel criticized. That can result in anger or even rage and shutdown, because for an autistic person, it's just completely incomprehensible that what they're seeing, and they know that their reality is being called into question. And because their brain doesn't allow for that possibility, this is a theory of mind deficit. It's also called mind blindness. You may hear it referred to as a difficulty with cognitive empathy, that ability to recognize, hey, wait, your perspective is different than mine. Your point of view is different from mine, and it's still valid. An autistic person is not wired sometimes to recognize that other. And a way to think about this, We all can struggle with this theory of mind deficit or cognitive empathy at times. And all you have to do is look at religion and politics. People get real stuck in their own perspectives and absolutely cannot, will not, won't see another perspective. That is an example of mind blindness, of a theory of mind deficit. Now, autistic individuals can learn to recognize that. I've been on calls with people where this light bulb goes off for them and they're like, oh, I really didn't realize that other perspective existed. And I use these visuals and imagery of literally having different point of view in a situation and seeing different things because of that different point of view. So it's not that autistic people can't learn, especially if they're willing and they want to, but it's just not this inherently hardwired trait. So over the course of time, the neurotypical partner starts to really be very negatively impacted emotionally. The neurotypical partner starts to have very negative impacts to their emotional well-being, their mental health, even their physical health. A lot of neurotypical partners will start to develop physical illnesses, autoimmune disorders, gastrointestinal type illnesses, irritable bowel syndrome, migraines, other types of things that are related to stress-related illnesses, or illnesses that are made worse by stress. Depression and anxiety can increase. And all of this, unfortunately, reinforces to the autistic partner that there's something wrong with their neurotypical partner. So it's reinforcing. Meanwhile, family members and friends oftentimes see the relationship or the autistic partner as this genuinely nice, kind, caring person. A lot of these conversations take place in the privately in the relationship, behind closed doors, in the home. And so other people don't necessarily observe what's happening and don't see this. And so it's common for family members or friends to not really recognize the extent of this problem between two partners. There's so many things, so many interactions that we have in the privacy of our own relationship that nobody else is privy to. Now, there may be times that other family members witness some of this, but they may not recognize and realize the extent of how one-sided it is, and how there are rarely those moments where an autistic partner says, oh, you know what, I can see your perspective, I can see where you're coming from, unless they literally live with you and they're right there, and that's not the case for most people. So again, that neurotypical partner is also, traumatized as well by the fact that no one believes them. If they go to a family member, a friend, a counselor even, then no one seems to see what's actually happening. Sometimes therapists may see that autistic partner struggles with recognizing the other perspective of the partner, but even therapists who aren't trained to see and recognize neurodivergence or even adult autism may not really see and understand what's going on. And oftentimes by the time the couple goes into couples therapy, a neurotypical partner is so emotionally harmed and dysregulated that they may actually seem like they're the problem to the therapist because they're coming in with so much trauma, so much exhaustion, so much frustration and resentment and anger, where their autistic partner's like, I don't really understand what's wrong. And it's that our relationship doesn't seem that bad to me. It can really look like this neurotypical partner is the crazy one. And that is, I've actually had this happen to me in my own relationship when my ex-husband and I went into therapy, into counseling, because I was very dysregulated and I had a very short trigger. So I would be very emotionally charged in a therapy session, while my ex-husband would just sit quietly and just kind of look at the therapist and shrug like, I don't know what she's so upset about. And it was truly crazy making. Okay, so now that we talked about what Cassandra Syndrome actually is, let's talk about what you can do to take care of yourself and to heal from Cassandra Syndrome. If you are in a relationship that you believe may be neurodivergent, you believe your partner may be autistic, or they are, maybe they're diagnosed, you want to learn as much as you can about what autism is so that you can understand your partner through that lens. And you may have already done a lot of that, because a lot of you have already done a lot of that. Now, the reason you're learning to understand them is not so you can now accommodate them, which is what a lot of you have done as well, but so that you can understand what's going on in their brain and how it's different than yours, so that you can still honor you and start to set boundaries, healthy boundaries with your partner. A lot of people seem to think that a neurotypical partner is responsible for doing all this accommodating for their autistic partner, and I don't agree with that at all. There are times when we understand someone and we understand what they need, if we can support them in that moment, and it doesn't do harm to us to support them in that moment, then okay. But it's never beneficial or optimal or necessary to sacrifice yourself in order to support someone else. So first and foremost, self-care is the most important piece of healing from anything, any kind of traumatic experience. And so it's important that you work with a professional. I highly recommend somatic therapy. There are many different forms of somatic therapy. And what it does is it helps your body to actually process the feelings. It helps your body process the physiological memories that are being stored there. They're impacting your actual physical health. So that's something that's really important for your body, especially if you're dealing with physical illnesses, medical illnesses. There are different modalities. Something that I'm trained in is accelerated resolution therapy. It's also called ART. Also, hypnosis can be a form of somatic therapy that helps you get underneath the surface of consciousness. You're never not aware of what's going on, though. It's not like the TV form of hypnosis. You're never out of control. You're never not aware of what's going on. It's not something to be scared of. There are podcasters who do somatic work in their podcasts. There's a guy called, I think he's called The Hypnotist, that actually does some self-hypnosis in his podcast. I've listened to some of his podcasts and they've been really, really helpful to me. Podcasts, listen to a couple, find somebody that resonates with you and start doing that work to help you regulate your nervous system, to help you start getting in touch with yourself so that you can start grounding yourself and assuring yourself that your reality is indeed your reality, and help you to separate, make a distinction between what my partner is telling me is reality and should be my reality and what I know to be my own reality. Now, a lot of people in neurodiverse relationships have a codependent dynamic, which means, and this was the case for me, which means that you are a caregiver and you see your worth and value and what you can do for others and how you can support them. And that's another thing you want to look at with a therapist or a coach like me, to really uncover in what ways are you giving in to what you know is true, sacrificing your own reality in order to keep your partner from becoming upset or angry. In what way are you uncomfortable with your partner's anger, with your partner's frustration with you? Does that trigger abandonment fears in you? Are you afraid? Is your partner physically scary? And if that's true, that's something that it's important to process with a therapist to understand, is this something that your partner's doing intentionally to intimidate you? Or is this a meltdown, an autistic meltdown, which is like a traffic jam in the brain that comes out behaviorally? And if it is, it's still not okay for you to be unsafe, but you want to learn how to remove yourself from that situation instead of trying to help your partner regulate. You want to take care of you in that moment, also take care of your children in that moment. So working with a private, personal therapist, not a marriage therapist. When you recognize and are experiencing signs of Cassandra syndrome, marriage therapy and couples therapy is not the first thing you need to do, because couples therapists and marriage therapists are trained to treat the relationship as the client. So the goal is to help preserve and promote the relationship. And there are wonderful marriage and family therapists out there, but especially if they don't understand neurodivergence, they can actually inadvertently make things much worse for you and for your autistic partner. These therapists oftentimes won't meet with you individually to see the impact that the relationship is having on you. You need someone who is a you person, someone who is your therapist, your person, to help you start healing. Educate yourself about autism, educate yourself about codependency, do your somatic work with a therapist or with podcasts. Now, lastly, something that can be very, very beneficial is some communication skills training, because in most neurodiverse relationships and even typical relationships, over the course of time, our communication really starts to devolve. And most of us are not born with inherently good communication skills. And most of us don't even come from families where communication, especially around conflict or differences, is something that is done really well. So communication is one of those things that you need to learn. You need to learn how to do it. And so I actually created a communication course specifically for neurodiverse couples and partners because of this. And I created it for my own family, for myself, and I've been using these tools and skills for years with my own family and teaching it to clients. So this is another way that you can help to improve your own approach toward communication. It's optimal if you both learn, but it's still really beneficial if just you learn these skills, because you are half of that communication interaction. So if you learn how to change and improve communication from your perspective, it has the potential to change the whole dynamic. So I'll drop a link to the course in the video here. So to recap, the 5 things that I want you to focus on for healing from Cassandra is: number 1, learning about autism and neurodiverse relationship dynamics. Number 2, learning more about codependency. Number 3, self-care, mental health therapist, somatic work. Number 4, communication skills. You want to learn more about communication skills. And number 5, I want to just throw this one in here. Remember, you are not alone. You aren't the only one out there experiencing this type of thing. Sometimes it's helpful to talk to others who are going through similar dynamics And that can be so validating and affirming. I want to caution you about some of the groups, like Facebook groups about Cassandra Syndrome or for Cassandra Syndrome. They can feel very affirming and validating in the beginning for sure. But sometimes these groups start to villainize an autistic partner and make the autism out to be the villain and the problem. And this is ultimately not helpful. It's not helpful. It actually disempowers you to be in those groups because the problem becomes your partner, and you can't do anything to change your partner or get your partner to change. But what you can do is start to look at healing yourself. And sometimes those groups can really keep people stuck in a victim mindset. And that's the last thing that you need. That's going to actually hold you back and do more harm. I have a Facebook group. We have both neurotypical and neurodivergent partners in there, men and women. And we don't allow bashing. We don't allow, just venting about a partner, but we do have conversations in there about the challenges and the struggles in a neurodiverse relationship. And all the posts are required to be from a standpoint of talking with others, asking for the feedback of others in the group. It can really help be grounding. So just go to Facebook, search my name, Jodi Carlton, and you should find it. So that's the spiel on Cassandra Syndrome. And if you personally need some help with this one-on-one, or if you're struggling to really understand if your partner is actually autistic, or is this something more nefarious like a toxic personality disorder, and if you need help with figuring all of that out, you can book a one-on-one consultation with me, or I also have an assessment that can help you with that. Just go to jodicarlton.com, and there's a link for quizzes, and you can look at the different ones that I have there available for you. All right, folks, hope this has been helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you find any of this information helpful to you, and that way you can get updates and notifications of future videos.